international solution. We share vital intelligence. Israel is a powerhouse of intelligence against terrorism. India is fighting terrorism in your part of the world. We all remember the horrible attack in Mumbai. In fact, Prime Minister Modi and I just met with little Moshe, the Israeli boy, who was saved by his Indian nanny, who was there with us as well. And we know that we face this common threat to our common civilization. So we have been cooperating and have decided to cooperate more intensively to battle this scourge that threatens the lives of Indians and Israelis and so many others around the world. And I think that this visit marks a turning point in that common struggle.
Prime Minister, the Hamas is a threat to Israel. The Hizbul Mujahideen, the Jaish-e-Mohammed, the Lashkar-e-Toiba are threats to India. How should we target these groups?
First of all, by sharing intelligence and then cooperating in ways that I'm not sure are best discussed even on my first interview on Indian television in this historic visit.
But Palestine continues to harbor Hamas and Pakistan continues to harbor the Lashkar-e-Toiba, Hizbul Mujahideen, Jaish-e-Mohammed. Israel hits the Hamas back. Do you believe, Mr. Prime Minister, that India, as a victim of terrorism, is well within its rights to hit back at these groups directly?
I think that every country, there are two requirements. One is to protect your people. The second, there's a requirement not to allow your territory to be used as a base of attacks against another country. And I think this frames the reference point for the self-defense that every country is entitled to exercise.
What is your advice to Pakistan, Prime Minister Netanyahu? They are harboring Sayyid Salahuddin, who has been designated as an international terrorist. But they say, Pakistan says, we are not bound by any such advice because this is not a United Nations declaration. They say this is the United States' move to appease India. Now, when a country like Pakistan harbors an international terrorist, how do we deal with a country like this, and what is your advice to Pakistan?
Well, I've said to every country around the world, don't harbor terrorists, don't support terrorists, and don't dispatch terrorists, and don't tolerate terrorists, because sooner or later, that scorpion is going to turn around and bite you. And I've said this equally to all nations. I haven't changed my view.
Prime Minister Netanyahu, you referred to Moshe Holzberg. There is a sentimental attachment that the people of India have to Moshe, because the pictures of Moshe after 26/11, they stung everyone's heart. And Moshe Holzberg was a small child, I think 2 or 3 years old, when he lost his parents during the 26/11 Mumbai terrorist attacks in 2008. I think he's 10 or 11 years old now. But those who killed his parents, Prime Minister, Rivka and Gabriel Holzberg, they are still to be brought to book in Pakistan. What do you have to say, Prime Minister Netanyahu, about the fact that 9 years after the Mumbai terrorist attacks, the orchestrators of the Mumbai attacks, Hafiz Saeed and Zakir Rahman Lakhvi, have not been brought to book by Pakistan? How do we deal with a country like this, now that we are working closer together?
Any country that harbors prospective murderers and actual murderers, and terrorists are just that, they're murderers, should bring them to justice. This is an expectation and a demand that we voice continually, as I do so now as well. I have to tell you that we face today, between India and Israel, our two democracies, the two bookends of this vast region, we face today a rash of radical Islamic terror that comes from various sources, various directions, from the Sunni variety, for example, headed by Daesh, by ISIS, the radical Shiites headed by Iran, with Hezbollah and others, and other sources. They threaten first Muslims. They kill Muslims a lot. But they also, of course, threaten non-Muslims, whom they view as infidels to be subjugated or eradicated. So a very large number of countries, India, Israel to be sure, but many others, including, I have to say, Arab countries in the Middle East, understand that we are in a common battle against terrorists who would not merely eradicate our freedoms, but actually slaughter us unless we defend ourselves. And that is producing interesting new relationships and alliances. What is obvious to me is that India and Israel are such natural allies, being first and foremost democracies, that you should ask yourself, how come we didn't cooperate not only in the battle against terrorism and against radicalism, but also in the quest to better the lives of our future, of our peoples. Prime Minister Modi said something very instructive. He said, life is innovation. I add, the future belongs to those nations who innovate. Israel is the innovation nation. India is replete with people of tremendous talent. In Silicon Valley, I said yesterday, they hear Hebrew and they hear Hindu. And sometimes they hear native-speaking English people, English speakers. But this is not really a joke. It's almost true.
That's true.
So our people have to both we have to defend ourselves against the terrorists, but we also have to seize the future. And the interesting question is, how come it took us so long to reach out to one another? Well, probably because you need leaders, and Prime Minister Modi is a real leader. I'm impressed with his commitment to both fight terrorism and promote technology. I call it fighting the bad and promoting the good. This is what will come out of this visit, a great partnership, no doubt, against terrorism, but also for the future of our people.
A lot of people, Prime Minister, have been saying exactly the same thing and sharing exactly the same sentiment which you're saying. How come it took us so long? And now that it's happening, a lot of people in India are saying that here are two countries who face one big fundamental challenge, and that is radical Islamic terrorism. I don't know if you're aware of this, Prime Minister Netanyahu, but radical Islamic terrorism spreads organically, and sometimes people need to come together. I find what you say about sharing intelligence extremely important. Just a small departure. You feel, Prime Minister Netanyahu, that radical Islamic terrorism is the greatest threat around the world today?
I think it's the greatest challenge to world order. And if terrorist, radical Islamic movements seize either as nations or take over entire nations, or as groups develop the weapons of mass death, this is a great danger, obviously. So I think that we have to do whatever we can to roll it back. I think the battle against ISIS is more successful than people anticipated. We each do our part in this. I think the danger is that ISIS will be defeated and the radical Shiites led by Iran will take its place.
Yeah.
That we haven't accomplished much if that happens. I think we should fight radical Islam equally. And again, this is not something that is limited to Israel and India or the United States. No, right now, many, many countries in our region understand that this is a dual task which is important for them as well. There is a clear malignancy, is how I would call it, interstitched between East and West that threatens the entire world order. It recognizes no limits. It has potential for great violence. And it just does not embrace the future the way Prime Minister Modi and I and many others see. We see a future of modernity, a future of progress, a partnership of progress. They want to take the world back
Yes.
to a medieval, early medieval barbarian culture. It's not a culture. It's, an enslavement. And so there's a great contest in the world, a great battle to be decided. Who wins out? I have no doubt that by pooling the forces of progress together, that modernity will win out, and that's our great challenge.
Prime Minister, on a broader global level, you and Prime Minister Narendra Modi have stated that there was a natural partnership between our nations, which I agree with, Prime Minister. And Prime Minister Netanyahu, just this March in Beijing, you spoke about cooperating together with China. Given the sensitive relationship between India and China at the present, what is your view of the shift in the balance of power and the geopolitical situation around the globe vis-à-vis India?
Look, we think India is a great power. I think it has great potential, and I think its potential is being realized now by very bold reforms that Prime Minister Modi is putting forward in India. I've put forward quite a few reforms in Israel as Prime Minister and as Finance Minister, and they're never easy. But it's when you take the immense talent of a people, whether the Jewish people or the citizens of Israel, Jews and non-Jews alike, and the citizens of India, and you unleash that genius and that talent and that enterprise and initiative in a freer economic system, that you see the full fruition of what the people can bring. There is, I think, no conflict at all in our cooperation with India and our relations with China. Many countries have such dual relations. We don't see a conflict in it, but we do think that we have a lot of lost ground, a lot of lost time to make up for in the relationship between Israel and India. And look at what we're doing. You know, I showed we're cooperating on everything from agriculture, water, space, health, everything. And every single thing is susceptible to innovation. It could change. For example, yesterday, Prime Minister Modi and I visited a farm, and we saw how, a greenhouse actually, how our satellite technology and our drone technology allows to target individual plants. So you don't have to take the water if it's a scarce resource. You don't have to spread it evenly on a big fields. You can actually direct the irrigation to where you actually need the water. This is a tremendous increase in productivity. I showed Prime Minister Modi today a graph of the most productive cows in the world. And you think, who produces more milk per cow in the world? You think maybe it's a Dutch cow or a French cow? No, it's an Israeli cow. It's a computerized cow. Every moo is computerized. And so we produce about twice the milk per cow compared to an average European cow. Why shouldn't Indian farmers enjoy this? Why should they not have the benefit of more productive techniques?
Prime Minister,
and Prime Minister Modi says they should. And that's the partnership that we are doing.
Prime Minister, on a lighter note, we know you are great at technology, Israelis, but I found that description of a computerized cow very fascinating. Prime Minister,
every moo is recorded.
The computerized cow. I would like to visit Israel and see the computerized cow myself someday. Finally, last question, Prime Minister Netanyahu. All of India is watching you, and you would be surprised how much coverage there has been across the Indian media and on Republic TV on Prime Minister's visit to Israel. Every move has been followed and listened to. Now you are going to be coming to India. Ahead of that, ahead of your visit, what message would you like to give Prime Minister Netanyahu to the 1.3 billion people of India who have been following this iconic meeting between the heads of one of the world's two most prominent democracies?
We love India. We admire India. We believe in India. And we want this partnership of India. On a personal note, you know, my wife and I, Sarah and I, hosted Prime Minister Modi last night in our residence. And, you know, some almost 30 years ago, I went out on a dinner date with a young woman who later became my wife, and we have two wonderful sons as a result of this. Perhaps my love of Indian cuisine had something to do with it, but last night we brought Reena Pushkarna, who owned that restaurant, to prepare the meal for Prime Minister Modi, and it was a wonderful evening and a real warmth. So I look forward to visiting India and express our affection and our admiration for the people of India directly. And I thank Prime Minister Modi for this invitation. This is a moment of history. There's no other word. People sense it. Yeah. They sense the warmth. They sense the partnership. They sense the friendship. It's. I said that we have waited 70 years for it.
Yeah.
Maybe we've waited 3,000 years for it. It's about time.
I think so. I think I would say, Prime Minister, that this is truly an inflection point, not just for our two countries, but for the world. So you are most welcome, and I hope you go out for a dinner date when you are here in New Delhi. And I thank you on behalf of all of us at Republic TV and all our viewers in India for talking to us today, and for the warmth that you have shown to our Prime Minister.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. The nation would want to know all over India today what, according to you, is the most significant aspect of this visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
The significance of this visit, it's actually the first visit, I think, in the long history of our people, of a leader of India in the land of Israel. So it has truly historic dimensions.
I'm now joined by Pawan Verma.